Are you overwhelmed? In today's episode, we're going to talk about the number one culprit in your overwhelm, delegation. So if you want to find out how to decrease the stress and anxiety in your life, you need to listen to this episode. Stay tuned. Welcome to the Agent Bridge podcast. I'm Brandon Baca, Marine Corps veteran and 15-year realtor, broker, and coach.
And I'm Marl Hessen. I'm a Fortune 500 C-suite executive, real estate investor, and entrepreneur.
The Agent Bridge is the proven path to real estate success without the burnout. All right, guys. Episode, is it 32 or 33? Am I right? Is it 32?
32.
Okay. It's
Sounds
32.
Right.
Okay. All right. We're going to talk about the number one culprit in your overwhelm, which is delegation. Before we get started, please do us a humongous favor. We appreciate every time you guys do this. If you haven't done it, please like this. Please subscribe. Please give us a rating on wherever you listen to, whether it's Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, wherever you can. Kind of give us a little bit of feedback or make us feel good about ourselves. We would appreciate it. So thank you so much. Okay, let's before we get into content, let's do our weekly market update, which I don't think there's much change. We've got maybe one coming this week.
Yeah, I think next week we should have a market update. Hopefully it's good. But Thursday, some new Fed data comes out. We should see where we stand. Yeah. So I would say let's maybe pump the brakes on a market update this week, and then hopefully we'll have something to share. I
haven't looked today, but somebody was telling me yesterday that stock markets are going up in anticipation of whatever.
Down a little bit today, but they were going up.
Okay, got it.
For the Friday and Monday.
Not that I know anything about on any of that stuff, but hey.
Which is, I wouldn't say it's typical. Usually they kind of creep down in anticipation of some data that gets released, but we'll see.
Cool. All right, well, let's get into content. So yeah, the number one culprit of your overwhelm, your anxiety and stress once you kind of get into your success track as a realtor, you start making things happen, and then all of a sudden there's too much. And you really don't have any ramp up time. You get a house under contract. Well, if you haven't done a contract yet and you get your first house under contract, that's overwhelmed from the very beginning because you don't know what you don't know. But you get, it's so funny how quickly you can go from 1 to 3 to 4 transactions going on at one time. And you are like going, I'm just trying not to miss something. That's right. And you've got all of this overwhelm and you've got all this anxiety and you're trying to do a great job and make sure everybody's taken care of and everything's to everyone. And it's no way to live.
It's almost too late at that point too. Like if you're in the mix and you've got 4 transactions going on and then you realize that you've got a problem, it's almost too late.
Right. So I will tell you, if you haven't got there yet, you will get there. You're going to get overwhelmed with the minutia, the communication, the showings, contracts, appointments, and how do you stay sane in all of the midst of this. So this is going to be a great episode because we've got, lots of expertise here through RL and corporate management. And I've run lots of real estate teams and companies, a couple of different companies. So I can tell you delegation is a must to progress in your career. So what I want to talk about, you might be thinking as a real estate agent because I've heard all of these excuses. So we'll see if this is you. Okay. All right. So if you're listening, okay, I don't want to spend the money. Okay. Maybe you have got, or I don't know how much it's going to cost. So there may be some like unknown in terms of how much it costs or that you know how much it costs and you don't want to spend it. Okay. The other one is I might hear this one the most. I tried that and it didn't work because they didn't do things the way that I like them to be done.
That's the most common. The fear that people won't do it as quote unquote good as you.
They won't do it as good as you. We're going to talk about that too.
And most of these tasks are 80% is good enough, and a lot of them maybe 60% is good enough. Like some of these tasks are very basic in nature and should be delegated, and you don't need a high level of expertise to knock them out.
That's exactly right. I like my clients to be well taken care of, and I can't do that unless I do everything. I'm involved with each part of the transaction. Okay. So here's what I want to challenge you with. It might be that you're a terrible delegator. It might be you might be imposing a limit on yourself if you if you are not going to incorporate delegation at some point, because you only have so much time. And also, it might be that you are stealing time from the people in your life that matter the most because you're unwilling to delegate. Okay? Hard truth, but that's reality.
Almost always goes back to not having good delegation skills, not having good time management skills.
That's exactly right. So here's why you need to delegate, because it matters. Not only does it matter to your clients, you, technically speaking, once you go through the process of putting delegation in place in the right way, your clients will get better service. Your family and friends will get more time from you. You will be able to go on vacations and not have to be on your phone the whole time if you can nail this skill. And it is a skill. So I just want to challenge that mindset, because it's a limiting belief for people that it's like, well, nobody's ever going to do it the way that I did it. Or, that you're not taking care of your clients well enough if you don't do every single little thing. That's all. Those are limiting beliefs. They're not true. And I want to give you a couple of examples of this, of what happens when you don't delegate. So one of them, and I may have said these before in a previous podcast, but we're going to go for it anyway. One of them is a very successful luxury agent in Oklahoma City. And I was doing a inspection, showed up the inspection, and she was telling me that she was so busy that she had to cancel her vacation. And she goes, well, that's just how it goes sometimes. And I go, God, that's not how I want it to go. I don't want to ever have to cancel my vacation because work is so busy.
Yeah.
Okay. The other one was a real estate agent that was very successful that said, I'm not taking any more clients. So I got a client that she didn't even refer to me, that they just said, we talked to this agent and they said she's not taking any more clients. Now, that is like burning money, right? You drive down the road, take $10,000, throw it out the window. That's what that is. Okay, so in both of those scenarios, lack of delegation caused that vacation to be canceled. Lack of delegation caused that realtor to lose money. So that's what can happen, and it will happen unless you start to incorporate this somewhere in your life. Okay, so if you are a successful agent, I want to talk about just a few places where you need to look to delegate activity in progression, because what I find is like agents, they look at the top of the mountain, right, instead of sort of incorporating delegation as they go.
Right.
And so you probably have some experience with this in your real estate career and in the corporate world. It's like that when you're trying to coach somebody on delegation, they're like, I just can't, like they can't let go. And the reality of it is it's a progressive letting go. You don't have to just turn everything over at once, and it's not possible.
Well, and a lot of times too, people go for the most important tasks and delegate them to the lowest level individual in their totem pole. And that's not how it works. Like, you don't find the most important things that you have to do and delegate them to the lowest paid person in your staff. Like you appropriately delegate. And this is where it goes back to being a skill, is you are starting small with little things here and there. And as they show that they have the responsibility needed to knock those tasks out, you're giving them more and more responsibility, or incorporating other people and other aspects of your business. And then, eventually, you're doing something where you're not in production.
Right. And you reminded me of something. The other place where people mess up is they might grab somebody to delegate because they're in a time crunch, or because they didn't get ahead of it to begin with. And so they're throwing a square peg in a round hole, and then they're upset.
Yeah.
Right. Because they're just doing it. Yeah. They're doing it from the sake of like, I just got to fix this problem.
Yeah.
Or I need somebody to do this for me, or I need somebody to go show this house for me. And then it can end up causing chaos.
Yeah.
And then they're like, well, delegation doesn't work.
Yeah, and if you did, it's just, there's all aspects of this. If you're talking about paperwork, you wouldn't pick the least organized person. If you're talking about someone who's not super presentable or able to travel around during the day, you wouldn't pick them as a showing assistant. Like, there's just a lot of things.
So I want to talk about, where you should start to look, and we've talked about this over and over and over again. Your first place you need to delegate is your transaction coordinator. You do not need to be doing contract to close. The reason you don't need to do contract to close is because you are entering yourself into the conversation, and you're going to get pinged multiple times a day from multiple different people. And every time you get pinged by somebody, that now creates a new task for you that you have to go find or do or whatever. And it just builds up and builds up and builds up. That leads to overwhelm.
If you delegate nothing else, delegate this. you are not doing anybody any favors by spending your time going around chasing down signatures or, getting a purchase and sale agreement written up, like all these different things. Like, have a process that you've built that you can quickly hand that off to someone who can go knock it out, because that is definitely not something that is filling your pipeline with business.
Well, I mean, again, what's your time worth, right? If you're going to make $100,000 a year, and remember we've talked about this before, you take the amount of money that you want to make and you divide it by 2,000, because that's how many working hours you have, 9 to 5 with 2 weeks off. Okay. So that basically means you're at $50 an hour. So a lot of these jobs are $20 an hour job or $30 an hour job. So if you don't hire a transaction coordinator, you are one. But the other thing is you can pay someone else that's more organized that money. And I don't get sometimes, because it's like $500 or $600 or $700 a transaction, depending on what TC company you use. I don't get how realtors are that cheap. I'm like, okay, look, you got, like, you're going to make 10 or 12 or 15 or 20,000 or $30,000 on this commission, and you can't spend $500 to $600 on a TC.
Yeah. I mean, think about it. They're sitting at a desk. So all of the paperwork stuff fits kind of their work schedule and how they operate. They're doing 50, 60 contracts a month. They're writing these things, they're getting things signed, they're organizing them. They know how to write a contract.
Right.
Like, let's get real. It's not like someone else can't do this as good as me. Like, contracts are very, very basic. You're filling in some blanks. Like, so a TC can totally handle this. That's what they do. That's, again, they're at a desk. So all of this stuff should be handed off as quickly as possible so that you can get out there, meet new clients, get new business, and, make sure your time's worth it.
So spend the $5 or $6 or $7 or $1,000 or whatever, and you get your time back. Right, which is that's the most important thing, and now you can use that time, which can legitimately, lead up to. Sorry, I kind of tripped over my words there. Like hours and hours a day in transaction coordination. So, get your time back. Okay, the other one. Okay, showings. This is one because you guys know, you get somebody from out of town and they need to see several areas of the city. You might spend a half a day or a day in showings. And this is one where it takes a little bit of finesse because, you don't want your clients to feel handed off if you are working with a showing coordinator. So again, in your buyer consultation, you need to bring that up. But if for your showing agent, you want somebody who's like, what I say is like an ambitious agent, like a newer ambitious agent. Like they're put together, they're organized, they're friendly, they can get along with people great. Introduce them at the beginning of the conversation when you're doing your buyer consultation, and they'll feel like it's a part of the team rather than being handed off.
Well, and you're increasing your availability. Like, you're not going to be available to show anywhere at any time, any day.
Right.
But if you have another person or two or three in the stable that can get out there to different parts of town when you can't, you're just increasing your availability.
Yeah, and they're happy to do it. Typically we're paying, depending on a market, it might change, but it's like $50 for the first door, $25 for every additional door. Some people pay $50 a door just straight up. So it's worth looking at. If you think about it, you go show 8 houses. That's $200, $300, $400, right? So it's worth it because you get your time back from that day. So you can use that to do more listing appointments, things like that.
Well, and I've even seen teams run these where the showing assistant is incentivized by having actually a percentage of the total commission.
Right.
It's usually a smaller percentage, but they cap them on the number of doors they pay them for, offer them a percentage commission at the end. That way they're incentivized in showing them fewer houses and getting them closed.
That's right.
So there's a lot of ways to run showing assistants, but make them part of the team and make them understand that, they have some benefit in getting a person to the closing table. And trust me, as long as you stay engaged to answer questions and you're available and you're reaching out to your clients to make sure transactions are going smoothly, they're not going to feel handed off. It's just you have to have some finesse, like you said.
That's exactly right. You will build it. If you do this the right way, you can build it into where you are involved at the places where you need to be involved. Your clients feel taken care of. But honestly, they'll feel, in a lot of cases, feel more taken care of by the team. Like, I think about this. I like, and maybe not everybody likes this, but I like restaurants where everybody's working together. because you get your food faster, you get your refills faster. Like everybody's kind of like that team type atmosphere, and you feel more taken care of. And I don't feel like I'm like that waiter is not my waiter or whatever. It's just more like, it's just this sort of idea of everybody's working together. It makes you feel more taken care of. Things get done more quickly, and it's a well-oiled machine. So you can build your business into the same thing.
Yeah, and tell your showing coordinator how you want to operate. So I use one in our brokerage. Her name's Andrea. I use her for all showings.
Yeah.
And, she likes to do it and takes on the responsibility. But one thing I like that she does is she'll bring me back. She'll collect a list of questions from my buyers. She'll bring them back to me. She'll send me a list via email saying, hey, here's the questions they had. And then I reach out to the client and say, I've got these, 6 or 8 questions. Here's the answers to your questions. Andrea shared this with me. And then that way they feel like, hey, RL's still involved. He's still plugged in. Andrea showed me the houses. She went back to him with a list of questions. He got them answered. So it feels like a team effort. And I promise you they won't feel handed off.
Has anybody ever like griped at you about that?
No.
Yeah.
Never.
And you're introducing that process, or Andrea at the beginning of the scenario. So that way it feels seamless.
And I also introduce it in such a way where I'm like, hey, or you could maybe do this with like Olivia or whomever. Like it's just one of those things where it's like, hey, here's my showing assistant. You may get me, you may get her, depending on the day, week, time, location in town, whatever. But just to let you know, I wanted to introduce you to her. She might show you a few properties. She's going to bring me back a list of questions. I'll get you answers. If you have any questions along the way, I'm your point of contact, and then we move on from there. And everybody's used to working with teams, no matter what industry we're talking about.
Right.
So as long as you're upfront and you're not just they show up at the house and then they've got this random person there. As long as you're upfront, people are going to understand.
Exactly. Buyers at lower price points, or if they're maybe too far. So you will get to a point in your career where you're going to have to make some decisions about time and money. One of the other places that you're going to delegate is, let's say you have to kind of draw a line in the sand. This is when I'm coaching agents. I'm like, okay, moving forward, anything under 300,000, unless it's a family member, goes to this agent, right? Now, again, you can be highly involved in certain touch points. You can still do a buyer consultation. You can still do, you can still advise on the negotiation and things like that. But you need to sort of hand off a lot of the customer relationship to someone else. So you are involved, but that person becomes their main point of contact. So that is also something that you kind of are building in that team atmosphere into your team, into your real estate business. But at some point, it's just going to make sense where it's like, hey, it's a time and money thing, which might sound, I don't know, it may sound weird to some of you, but it becomes a reality, and you have to kind of look at time and money.
Yeah, and I would say that, and I think you just hinted on this actually, but I would say this is the time where we're starting to talk about team building. Like this, number 3 here, where we're talking about lower price points. You're starting to build a team. This is no longer just about delegation, but you're building a team. And if you've got a pipeline and you're starting to work your way into those $500,000 to $1 million price points, and you're handing off those $300,000 homes, just operate it as a team. Take a portion of their commission, offer them a commission that works for them, and just let them handle it, and then be there to advise them along the way. This is the beginning of building a team. And
that's right.
If you want to service your clients appropriately, you can't service everybody. You're going to have to work with smaller and smaller groups of people as you go, and then eventually you're probably going to be out of production. That's another conversation for another day.
That's another podcast. But yeah, that's exactly right. And that goes into our next one, which is the listing management piece as well. You're going to do the same thing. You're going to have to hand off that listing management. Now, look, here's the thing about this. When you start to think this way in that terms of delegation, you are making maximum profitability for little chunks of time. So you are monetizing your influence in the marketplace, and that's where real money starts to come in. Yep. Again, different discussion for a different podcast, but that's where it really gets exciting, because you go, hey, look, I'm involved in this transaction for 2 or 3 hours, but I'm making thousands of dollars with my influence and hard work. And so it starts to build on you.
Yeah. And if you still want to go to the listing appointment, great, but just hand off aspects of getting a listing live. Somebody scheduling the pictures, somebody getting the listing on the MLS, all those things can be handed off, and you can still do an effective job for your clients.
That's exactly right. Open house is another one. Inspections, man, I'll tell you, inspections are such a time suck. Sometimes people are going to want someone to be there. It's worth paying one of your ambitious agents that's got some experience to go do that for you. Or if you have an agent assistant, that would be a good place to put them in. But yeah, that's a great place, or those are great deals to be thinking about. So paperwork, showings, buyers and listings, open houses and inspections. So in RL, you're right. It's the kind of the progression of building a team.
Yeah, and your who you pick for these roles matters. Your skill set, your delegation skill set, you need to work on how you are choosing the right people for the right roles. Not everybody's cut out to run an open house, or not everybody's cut out for the paperwork side, or not everybody's cut out to be a showing assistant. Make sure that you're evaluating the skill sets of the people you're choosing around you, because they do represent you. While someone won't feel handed off if you do it appropriately, they will want someone who can effectively do those aspects that you're asking them to do. So just be careful as you're choosing these people. You won't always get it right.
Yeah.
And you'll have to maybe make some changes along the way, but do try to learn the skill set of picking the right people for the right roles.
Well, the whole thing of delegation is a skill set that you have to develop. You're not going to get it perfect right out of the gate.
Right.
You're going to learn. There's nuance to it. And we're going to go through some fundamentals of how to delegate here in terms of that. But who is a big part of it? Make sure you're using some wisdom and discernment in picking the right person for the job. But again, you are going to make mistakes. And that doesn't mean, when you make that mistake, that doesn't mean delegation doesn't work. It just means that you're learning.
That's right.
Right. You've got to commit. Right. And that's the difference between people who are progressing in their career and are leading, is when a lot of people, when they do something and it doesn't work, they quit. Well, how about you do something and it doesn't work, and then you try it a different way?
Yeah.
So that's what delegation, you're going to mess it up, but you have to keep doing it.
More often than not, and I think we're about to get into this part of delegation, but more often than not, you haven't set appropriate expectations.
Yeah.
And that is the most important aspect of the skill, alongside of who you're picking. But making sure you're setting the appropriate expectations for what you're asking them to do is the most important.
All right. So I'm going to tell you where I mess this up, right? I want people to read my mind. I'm like, here's the job. Go knock it out, right? Because I want them to think like I think. And the reality of it is, nobody thinks exactly the way that I think. And so you have to provide clarity around what you want and how you want it done, because people can't read your mind. Because it's like when somebody gives me a job to do, I don't want them to tell me how to do it. I'm like, I'll figure out my best way to get this done.
That's right.
But not everybody thinks that way.
No.
Right? A lot of people think, well, like, how do you want me to do it? Well, where do I go? Who do I call? Right? And so depending on the level of delegation, that's going to shape how you basically delegate. So there are 5 levels. By the way, I got this from fullfocus.co, Michael Hyatt's company and Megan Miller's company. So this is, there are 5 levels that we follow here. And what I would say is you need to familiarize yourself with these levels. So, and work them into the lexicon of your organization, of your team, even if it's 2 or 3 people. That way you can have clarity about what level of delegation this is. So level 1, do as I say. So this means do exactly what I've asked you to do. Don't deviate from my instructions. I've already researched the options and determined what I want you to do. Now, if you're doing a level 1 delegation, you have to be very clear.
Very clear. People can't, just as you just said, people can't read your mind. So if you're going to ask them to do as I say, you have to explicitly say what that is.
Yeah, those of us who have kids, we can tell you. Like, you'd be like, clean your room. And I mean every corner, and don't put it under the bed. Yeah. Right? You have to be very, very clear. Or, mow the lawn or whatever. Take out the trash. Every piece of trash on the back porch needs to be gone. Right? And I don't say micromanage that you got to be a jerk to people. but you do want to create clarity if you're doing a level 1 delegation. Having to delegate at level 1 and level 2 as much because the framework for that has already been
Absolutely.
done.
Yeah.
Right. And I was going to talk about this later, but we can talk about it now. It's like when you are beginning those first portions of your delegation for level 1 and level 2, it is your job to build out the process.
Absolutely is. And,
Right.
Usually if once you have it built out, it is easy to delegate in level 1 and level 2. And I would say that people who are newer to the organization or newer in this line of business usually get delegated at a level 1 or level 2 because they're just very new to everything.
Right. Okay. Level 4, decide and inform. This means to make a decision, then tell me what you did. I trust you to do the research, make the best decision you can, and then keep me in the loop. I don't want to be surprised by someone else. Okay, so that is, hey, I'm good. Just let me know what you did, right? I trust you. Let me know what happened. And that would be one where maybe I delegated a buyer or delegated a seller where it's like, hey, let me know what house they decided on because I don't want them to be like, hey, did you see our house? And me be like, no. So level 4 is going to be sort of maybe a more experienced agent that you've delegated to. And level 5, and this is the one that I like to be delegated, is act independently. This means to make whatever decision you think is best. No need to report back. Trust you completely. I know you'll follow through. You have my full support. Okay. And the only thing that level 5s that if I'm delegating at a level 5, I'm looking at like quarterly reporting or something like that as markers for how the business is doing. So really where you're going to be like delegating initially as you start your business is 1 and 2, right? 3 and 4 as your team starts to grow. And then 5 is like when you have like a real business and you've got like a COO and yeah. So, keep that in mind as you're kind of building. So again, when you're talking to people, like I would even say to someone, okay, hey, look, this is a level 2 or this is a level 3 delegation. If you can kind of work that into your team and make that a part of your infrastructure, that's going to make things a lot easier in terms of communication because where teams break down a lot is the communication, right? Nobody knows what's going on. Nobody's telling me anything, so on and so forth.
And if they understand the levels, they'll know that it helps inform them what questions they need to ask too.
So make sure you've got that real clear. And here's why you do all this stuff, right? It's because when you do the initial work to get this stuff established, you're going to be able to think. So you can be creative and you can let your mind get into white space, which means you can, like, that's going to have new ideas and new possibilities and new ways to solve problems and new opportunities that you can potentially pursue when you've got a lot of these like minutia off of your plate. So that's like the purpose of this. And the other thing is you've got more time with people that you love and that you want to spend time with, which that's the whole point, right? Is that you are doing this to benefit the people that are around you. So once you've kind of got the initial work done, you're going to be able to think and your business will be able to fly because if your business is completely dependent upon you, you don't have one.
That's right. And honestly, if you aren't able to delegate and get people to learn, grow, and do, you're never going to be able to get out of production run an effective business, as you just indicated, because people have to get hands-on in this business and understand how things are going to work. And if you have built an efficient process or an efficient business or anything that you've done that is going to be beneficial to the people that are learning, then obviously you're going to bring them up in an environment that's going to make them successful too, which makes you more successful.
Yeah, exactly. And so this is the first level of, hey, scaling a business, scalability, right? You've got systems in place that people can follow to create an intended and predictable response. Okay, so now we've got kind of the framework built for scale, right, where you can really, really grow something pretty amazing. So keep this in mind. This stuff is kind of gets into, like you said, into the team building. And we're probably going to talk about that more and more as we get into these weeks, as this next level of professionalism as becoming a realtor. We've talked a lot about basics, but this is really important to know even from the very beginning, because even if you're still a newbie agent, you need to be delegating TC stuff, right? Okay. And then and start working on your skill now for what your business will become. So anyway, anything else we need to say about this episode and the recap? I mean, this is all fun stuff for me to talk about. I love the business part of like building the structure of a business and delegation and just again, challenge those limiting beliefs.
I would just say every minute you're spending on things like paperwork is a minute you're not spending on lead gen, and honestly, that's where you need to be spending the majority of your time. Yeah. And if you're not, then you're not delegating appropriately.
Yeah, so that's the right thing to remember is like you need to be focused on what makes you the most money, right, for your time, which is lead generation, cultivating relationships.
And if you have a client that's, under contract now or about to be under contract, that's going to age out in 30 days. You've got to have someone else that's, right behind them that's going to be under contract. So you're trying to build a pipeline.
That's right.
A pipeline that's going to give you consistent income throughout the year, not for that 1 month or those 2 months. So, you have to be working on lead generation. And so paperwork, all that, showing, running around in the car, not productive.
That's right. All right, guys. Well, thank you for joining in this week. Again, please take some time to like and subscribe, follow, leave us a review. That's how it grows. Share this with a couple of people if you would. We really appreciate you guys following us. I think we're getting up to about 200 followers now on YouTube. Anyway. That's right. Yep. And so we appreciate you guys sticking with us and hope you're learning stuff. Please give us a comment. We'll talk to you next week. Thanks, guys.
Thanks.